Later, Angelica participates in her own match, and she absolutely destroys her opponent. Rick congratulates her on making it through the preliminaries, and Angelica brags about winning 40 matches in a row. Angelica also intends on winning her way through the block league, and Rick is eager to do his best. Angelica still can't believe that he's going to try and do 40 matches in 4 days, because each venue only hosts one bout per day. This means Rick will have to travel a long distance between preliminary matches, but Angelica doesn't think it's possible. Rick has to get to the Green Hill Arena in 10 minutes before his next fight, but Angelica gets annoyed because he isn't listening. This arena is 30 kilometers away, and he won't be able to get there in time, even if he rode in a carriage. Rick calls her crazy for even suggesting that he ride on a slow carriage, because he had rather just run. Angelica says that makes even less sense, but Rick shows that he is much faster than a carriage. Angelica would like to watch Rick's match, but there is no possible way she could make it in time. Rionette says she can make it happen, so she jumps over the builds to get there. At the venue we see that Rick already finished his match, but Angelica is in no shape to watch. Rick won, but he still needs to work on his 8 holdback technique, because he did too much damage. Rick heads to the next venue, so Angelica tries to avoid being dragged away again, but Rionette takes her away anyway. Then the 3 of them go from arena to arena, as Rick destroys several opponents. The 4 days pass, and Angelica is stunned, because Rick actually managed to win the 40 matches he needed for the preliminaries. Next is the block league matches, and Angelica is relieved that she is not in the same block as Rick. Angelica was hoping to win the entire tournament, but she realizes now that it will be impossible with Rick around. To make things worse, Rionette explains that the S-rank Brufston is participating as well. Angelica thinks that no matter how things seem, she still can't let a certain person get away with something. Rionette wonders what Angelica is talking about, but Angelica just changes the topic. Angelica wonders where Rick is, so Rionette explains that Rick is out on his daily 600 kilometers run. Angelica isn't even surprised anymore by the crazy stuff Rick does, and Angelica wonders how Rionette puts up with him. Rionette is always with Rick, so Angelica pities her, for people probably thinking that they are in love. Surprisingly, Rionette doesn't mind, as Rionette reveals that she has a deep affection for Rick. Some guy approaches them, so Angelica thinks he is trying to flirt with them. Embarrassingly for her, the guy just needs their help with some work because he doesn't have enough staff. Rick finishes his run, and he is met by the chairman of the Western League's management committee. His name is Snape, and he is impressed by Rick for being the fastest qualifier in the preliminary league's history. The lizard man is told that Angelica isn't there, and Rick is surprised that he knows her. Then Snape is the one to be surprised when Rick can tell that he is a retired fighter, and Rick explains that he knew Snape was a fighter from their handshake. Snape reveals that he last fought 20 years ago, when he won a little competition. The roar of the crowd was rejuvenating, but Snape retired when he was just 23 years old. That competition ended up being the first and last time he won anything. Snape doesn't compete anymore, but his company has entered someone in this year's competition. As Snape leaves, he tells Rick to say hello to Angelica for him, but Snape also wants him to warn her not to get too excited. Afterwards, Melisha seems worried, and she reveals that Snape is from the Dragonaut Company. Snape makes himself appear like a gentleman, but there are rumors that he is connected to the underworld. Snape is the lead sponsor of this year's competition, and sponsors are given 1 slot for a competitor in the tournament. Just then Rick overhears some guys talking about this year's bunny girls. They fawn over a newcomer, and they call her a dark elf girl. Then we see the bunny girls they are talking about, Angelica and Rionette, who have agreed to help the guy from earlier. The job of the bunny girls is to build excitement for the tournament and to take bets. Rionette only agreed to do it because Angelica did, and Angelica says that she couldn't turn down someone asking for help with blood on their face. Some drunk guy makes all the bunny girls uncomfortable, but he pays the price when he tries to touch Angelica. Angelica gets really embarrassed when Rick arrives, and Angelica explains that she is helping someone. Rick is shocked at how great Rionette looks, and Angelica becomes furious because Rick didn't react the same way to her. Elsewhere, the old gym leader reads about how Brufston was amazingly able to pass the preliminaries in just 2 days. What's even more incredible is that every one of his matches was decided by a single knockout blow. His accomplishment is getting all the attention, but Kelvin also points out that Rick was able to make it through the Western League in just 4 days. Kelvin isn't scared at all, and is just excited for this year's tournament. A look back we see when the gym owner first met Kelvin. The owner was stunned to see that Kelvin had just finished destroying a group of guys, and he called him by his nickname, which was the Hungry Wolf of the Slums. Kelvin asked the old man to clean up his mess, but the old guy refused. He explained that he was there to scout Kelvin and bring him back to Heractopia. In Heractopia he would be able to obtain whatever he wanted by fighting and winning. That didn't seem very interesting to Kelvin, so the owner explained that there were a lot of strong fighters there. This sounded like much more fun to Kelvin, so Kelvin agreed to go. Kelvin has that same expression on his face now, and Kelvin explained that he hasn't been this excited in some time. Back with Rick, Angelica is still upset that Rick didn't look at her a certain way. Rick changes the topic and reveals that Snape was looking for her. Angelica is clearly surprised, but she denies knowing anyone by that name. The next day the block league competition to decide the tournament participants begins. Only one participant from each block can participate in the final tournament, so it will be really intense. Angelica faces off against a woman named Helen, but Rick can tell that Angelica doesn't seem like her usual self. Angelica is really tense, but she still manages to win. Rick is up next, and he uses one of his 8 holdback technique to defeat his opponent. Rionette is pleased to see that Rick is getting better at holding back, but Angelica thinks he is just as ridiculous as ever. Then the two take turns winning fights, until there are only 4 matches left. Rick wants to discuss tactics because they have to win every match, but Angelica says that she doesn't need it. Angelica faces off against her next opponent, and Rick is impressed to see her combining her physical techniques with magic. However, Rick can tell that there is something dangerous about her opponent. This guy breaks through her magic, and he manages to land a devastating punch. Rick is concerned that she takes some serious damage, and it is announced that Angelica has been defeated. Angelica fought hard to press her opponent, but the guy named Taylor destroyed her with a single blow. Angelica gets healed, but her pride is still injured. Rick says that she was impatient and stubborn while fighting, but this just gets her more upset. Rick keeps trying to tell her that she could have won if she was more focused, so he wonders if something is bothering her. Rick isn't even sure if he will be able to do anything, but he wants to try and help her. Rick's kind words get Angelica to give in, and she reveals that Snape is her fiancé. Angelica explains that a year ago, her parents passed away in an accident. Angelica and her siblings took on the responsibilities of the household, but they were inexperienced and fell into great financial difficulties. Their evil grandfather stepped in and made a deal with Snape. Snape promised to provide them with a large sum of money, but he demanded to be allowed to marry Angelica. Rick has a seriously delayed reaction to the news, and Angelica becomes furious by his lack of ability to process information. Angelica goes on to explain that while trying to stop their marriage, she discovered that Snape had become the main sponsor for the tournament. Angelica prepares to reveal what Snape's true intentions are, but they are interrupted by some commotion. They find that some dragon guy that Angelica is horrified of is causing a stir, and he is being confronted by the guy that easily defeated Angelica earlier. Taylor tries to stop the dragon man from hurting a woman, but the dragon man tells him that he is getting too cocky. Then Angelica is shocked when the beast knocks Taylor out with just one blow. A waitress tries to calm the monster down, but he just ends up bothering her as well. Angelica jumps in to stop him, but this just infuriates the guy. He attacks Angelica, but Rick shocks everyone by stepping in and telling the guy to calm down. Just then Snape arrives and stops a dragon man named Geese. Snape tells Geese to save it for the tournament, so Geese leaves. Snape apologizes to the bar owner and explains that Geese is his brother. There is no one strong enough to beat him, so he is troublesome to deal with when he gets violent. Snape checks on Angelica, and he is glad to hear that she is not hurt. Snape leaves, so Angelica explains the connection between herself, Snape, and the tournament. Snape promised to give her family a very large amount of money, but her investigation found that Snape's company doesn't have nearly enough to pay. This made her realize that Snape intends to earn money through the tournament. Rick uses his brain to determine that Snape is going to use the sponsor slot to fix the outcome of the tournament, and Angelica confirms it. Because of this, Angelica decided to win the tournament, so Snape couldn't uphold his end of the deal, and the engagement would be cancelled. The problem is that Snape used his sponsor slot on Geese, and Angelica knows that she can't beat him. Angelica is stunned when Rick offers to train her, and Angelica begins to fear for her own life. So what will Angelica do? Subscribe to our channel to find out what will happen next. So friends, If you liked our recap video, then please like and share this video and do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.